on the edge, on the waning milliseconds, and gets the job done. Danny, look at Arjun's face. It looks like he hasn't been through anything at all. Yet internally, you must be shaking.
And he kept his nerves. He kept his poise. Literally, his pose didn't change at all from one victory to another. He just stole a victory from Magnus Carlsen, who kind of beat himself in that game with that blunder with knight takes f4. But he gets the job done, and we have a one-game match here. Oh my God, that was nerve-wracking. By the way, I think you're right. I think Magnus should have sacked on g2 and tried to flag him. That would have been a dirty trick.
Yeah, and in the SEC, you hold nothing back. And Arjun Erigaisi, I mean, he has been held back in a way by some of his time usage. But in that game, when he was down to his final seconds, he found the tactics when Magnus didn't. So we are back to our Petrov. I don't think that the fans at home are thrilled to see some of these variations. But in these kind of lines, we saw Richard Rapport against Jan Nepomniachtchi, where things can get very spicy and dicey, and either side can go wrong.
Yeah, we also see a turning of the tables in regards to time management. So Magnus goes away from a couple games with d4 back to the Petrov, as you said, but also no time advantage on the clock here. We'll see if Arjun actually gets himself in an opening and a middle game that he knows better than Magnus. That hasn't happened very often yet today.
And is part of it because Magnus keeps eating? Like, he's off screen right now. I think he is very hungry. I mean, he must be quite into the evening for him. Maybe it's dinner time. But either way, Magnus is snacking.
Snacking. You got to do it. You got to snack when you're hungry. We usually end these matches, as you know, we're always famished. We start talking about food by the end. I'll try to stop. I'll try to not do that yet. All right, we get a bunch of exchanges on the board. A positional advantage for black in terms of the c3 pawn being a target, but the d5 pawn also a target long-term if white can figure that out.
Sorry, why did c takes d5 get an exclamation point? You just captured a pawn back. And hey, credit to you, Arjun. You're making chess even the simplest.
We like to call those chess.com participation trophies. That's it. We're just trying to make sure everyone feels good about participating.
I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait, what did I miss? We were, telling some jokes over here, and suddenly there's an exclamation point. But I guess it's such a good recapture that Magnus is frozen. He hasn't responded yet. And in this position, we talked about an isolated pawn in the previous game. This pawn is isolated. There are open files for the black rooks. I think that when we kind of hate on isolated pawns, we should appreciate the open files the rooks get. And if this bishop can move out the way and the black rook gets to c8, we are looking at a backwards pawn on c3, which really nobody likes.
You explained that way better than I did. Again, the dynamic of the c3 pawn and the d5 pawn are what both sides are thinking about. I like this awkward bishop g5, though, from Magnus, even though he's down on time. You're trying to create some weird outside chances of a kingside attack appearing quickly. Like the bishop moving from d3 and the queen and bishop creating a battery is sometimes on the agenda. Again, there aren't Greek gift sacrifices here, and surely that black knight will probably be coming to f8 at some point. But you have to keep in mind the potential for white to bring pieces in a hurry to the king side here.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, white is ahead in development. Black has not moved this bishop, and it can't legally move because there's a knight and pawn in its path. The rook on e8 is sitting in the corner. And we look at this, there's control of the e-file. There was some back rank check and mate threats, but Arjun, as you said, knight f8, there is no mate. And queen e8 would be a funny move to play because you pin this bishop on the last rank, but don't just be tunneling towards the enemy king. Look out for your own pieces. Don't drop the c3 pawn.
Exactly. It would be funny. It is a pin, but c3 has to be guarded, which means Arjun has plenty of time to undevelop or finish development, if you will. Undevelop the bishop. He does so. The rook maybe comes to c8, and I like Arjun's chances here. I mean, too early to call it, but I really love how he played this game. A really good follow-up to the victory that he just got the game before.
Yeah, this is just pleasant for black. This knight can hop out and does to e6. The f4 square is black's for the taking. White is quite compact. I think that's a good word to use when you have these four pieces in a row like this. But the rook at a1, it's sort of stuck protecting the a5 pawn. The queen tethered to c3. I do feel like white has the more targetable weaknesses, but black does have this d5 pawn, and I will add that this h7 pawn and potential sacrifices still hang in the air. So, Danny, you mentioned that a while ago. I think it was a good thing to shout out that there could be a time, if black's not looking out for it, there could be some danger on the king side.
Indeed. By the way, speaking of things to look out for, this is the last game in the 5-minute portion. You see that clock. We have hit zeros above Arjun Erigaisi's head. That means that, well, if you're Arjun, you would love to head into the 3-1 portion tied. If you drew that up, you say, shout out, take that, smarter chess. I just tied things as we head into the 3-1 portion. But plenty of chess on the board left to be played here. Bishop d2, h6 played to avoid those tactics. Maybe no more sacrifices, Robert.
And you mentioned smarter chess. Weren't the prediction something like 4.5, 2.5?
I didn't want to say it. It was 4.5, 2.5. That's why that's why I paused. You know me well enough to know. I said, shout out, take that, smarter chess, and then my brain went, no, I'm not going to mention that if Magnus wins, smarter chess was 100% correct on the score.
Nobody likes when that's the case, especially Arjun. He would hate that. And look at the position he has: a knight on f4, healthy bishops staring towards the white king. It's not like there's an easy path to victory for either side. We know the position is relatively equal. There are some dynamics at play here. Bishop f5 trying to come into e4. So, Danny, I guess my question overall, and wow, knight e5.
Wow, that's an aggressive move. Cuts off the queen and bishop from protecting the knight, but it sacrifices a pawn. Is Magnus just trying to simplify things out? In the end, he takes f4 and then takes d5, and b7 falls when c3 does?
Nice. Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah, we see a trade. D5 drops. B7 is under attack. C3 may be loose as well. And if B7 falls, white is better because white has a bishop on a light square aiming at what would have been a loose pawn on A6. I'm going to very quickly show that and get us right back to...
Yeah.
Actually, I won't. The game is progressing. I feel like it's taking down a different path because now we still have equal material. Pawns have been traded. But, Danny, I have to say, black looking good. These are ugly pawns.
Ugly pawns. I like that you highlighted the long-term feature, though. If b7 falls, a6 goes with it. That bishop on f1 is a spy on the board, looking at things from long range, a sniper, as they call bishops sometimes these days. I like queen d5, though, getting the pieces off. Now, how's Magnus defending the pawn? I think he's just losing a5. Indeed.
Arjun's completely outplaying him. I mean, really a nice game from Arjun, and you sensed it. So shouts to you that at the start of this game, Magnus was taking his time. That sort of flipped. And the fact that Arjun won that previous game, I think it actually, it bothers Magnus. We know that top players tend to be perfectionists. And the fact that Magnus just blundered, he was thinking that he was getting a tactic on Arjun, but he missed the immediate response. I think that really is irking him. And I think that, as we see here, I mean, look at this. G4 by Magnus. He wants to maybe get his bishop on that long diagonal, but Danny, he's down a pawn, and that's clear.
Down a clear pawn. I just said what you said in the reverse order. That was weird. Down a clear pawn. But, okay, the bishop pair is pesky in the open board with pawns on both sides, so they usually have good defensive chances here, but I'm liking how Arjun's playing. I know the eval bar slid a little bit back for black there, but I guess it simplifies Arjun's job, and he just wants to push the a pawn now.
Yeah, he would love to get that pawn going. Perhaps there's an argument at some moment for giving up your bishop for the knight, because opposite colored bishop positions, they tend to have drawish tendencies. Now, this wouldn't be that easy because white's king is actually quite open. That may seem ridiculous. How are you going to go checkmate that king? But if you can try to visualize the position without these two pieces, black is both ahead an a pawn, an outside passer, and has a very safe king compared to white's kind of exposed king side. So I think that even that trade, Danny, that typically is the way that players go forward to get that half point, that actually might not be the path forward in this one.
Yeah. Good call out, especially because you also even have targets. I mean, the h3 and the g4 pawn, in addition to the mating net potential, could end up backfiring and giving black a second weakness. Speaking of those pawns, here goes knight g5. Arjun getting down to equal on the clock, though. He's had a time advantage throughout. If this becomes a mutual time scramble, we've seen crazy things happen before. I don't think Arjun wants that.
Well, these positions are very frustrating because from the black side, you should be pressing for a win, but most variations that you're calculating in your head are like, well, that looks equal. That looks like no problem. This looks okay. So, in this position, white can regain the pawn with rook to c5 at the end, hitting two pawns at once, or so it would appear. But there is rook to b5 in that position. So that's why instead you see Magnus go behind the enemy passer. This is very instructive for those of you. The black rook would like to be behind his pass pawn. Of course, that was not available and definitely not happening now.
I love that. The rook behind the pawn is going to force the black rook into a more passive defense position in front of the pawn. It's exactly what happens as I say it. And yeah, as Robert said, this is ideal defensive setup here from Magnus. Your rook gets to be active, poking at the 7th rank, even outside weird mating nets with the bishop pair, while also keeping an eye on the a-pawn. So, man, under 30 seconds. The eval board now saying white is pushing here. What in the world is happening?
Well, white is now capturing this pawn, and black's king is in worse shape. The tables have turned. Black's king in some danger over here. This knight not defended. A bishop d5, bishop d4 follow-up. The g7 pawn could be in trouble. And actually, the eval bar is all the way up right now. It's clear that there is trouble for Arjun Erigaisi.
And it's all the tactics that the bishops bring to the table. I'm looking at rook takes g7. That obviously doesn't work now because the knight and king are on it, but there's tactics on g7 with the rook on c3. Could I just go back to a7 in some spots and then play bishop d5? The bishop pair is just so hard to deal with here. And that's what Magnus does. Maybe, by the way, maybe it was rook e7. I know okay, it's too late now.
Yeah, but probably something like that. But here it seems it's just winning for Magnus. Bishop e4 check is actually tempting to me because you almost create a mating net against the mating net. This rook. Oh, the rook.
Well, it can't go to c2 because bishop e4 check wins the rook.
No,
it's just an exchange.
And look at this follow-up, by the way. f4, f5, and rook takes g7 is unstoppable because it comes with a check. And the a2 pawn is also not going anywhere thanks to the bishop.
Unreal that this game went from Arjun Erigaisi up a pawn as black in complete control to Magnus Carlsen stealing a victory from the jaws of defeat, literally, and stealing our hearts out of our chest because he proves